Welcome back to Educational Warfare. I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer with my partner, Dr. Ryan Jackson. Today, we're back with you today. We're excited to talk about our topic today, but a very special thank you first to our producer, Tommy Ruth. Thank you for doing everything in the back and leading us, and our director, Matt Paff, and shouting out to tell us what to do and make sure this all goes smoothly. So thank you so much, guys. Remember, everybody, we are on Blue Sky. We are on X at EDU Warfare. And now you can watch full video episodes of our show on Spotify and the Educational Warfare YouTube channel.
Let's go.
That's right. You can watch and listen to us take on the issues that are attacking education. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being with us. What's up, Dr. J? Why don't you lay at the smackdown on us about today's show?
Hey, man, it's great to be back in here. Lots going on. Tons going on today. This is a special, packed episode. But let's start off real quick, man. I've got to give a heartfelt, shout out to all of our educator friends in California right now. Wildfires just leveling Los Angeles in particular. So educators, friends on the West Coast, California, we are with you. Our hearts go out to you. Prayers uplifted for them. We also, I know this is kind of starting on a dour note, but we also just had the passing of, President Jimmy Carter, former President Carter, just passed away. Of course, incredible legacy there, which is going to dovetail into this episode. I may even have to pop quiz you on that, but we just had the passing of President Carter. Of course, we now have a new presidency. So we got the Trump presidency. We just passed J6 a couple of days ago, a historical day in our history, but we've got President Trump again. He's back, the new president, which ties us into the episode today, which again, this impacts all educators. It's a hot button topic, hot button issue, and it is about, and I think we've even got this queued up, so this may be the best way to introduce it, but it's about the president's new appointment as Director of Education for the country. Can we cue that up and see who our new Director of Education is?
Yes.
Remember, like you told me when I was a little girl, this is gonna hurt me a lot worse than it hurts you.
For our audience, which one? Oh, that's her. That's our new Director of Education.
Right there. Just smacked her child.
That is Linda McMahon, so the wife of Vince McMahon, of course, a son of the original founder, now World Wrestling Entertainment Guru. What? And this is his wife, videos. So, yeah, that's bringing us into it. That's Linda McMahon, new Donald Trump appointment for, Director of Education for the United States. And I'm torn on this issue, man. I know we're going to really unpack this, but I'm torn on this issue for a lot of different reasons, pros and cons. I can't wait to dig into that with you, man. But yeah, big episode for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. She's come in here, and like you said, it's controversial. She has a world outside of education. We'll get into kind of her qualifications for education, but obviously very visible in a very polarizing thing. Professional wrestling is not exactly, it's not a hot TV show. It's you love it or you think it's dumb or you're fanatical about it. And she's there, and she's been on screen being, slapped by her daughter, fighting her son, saying some things that probably, most educators, if we had a video saying that on TV, we probably called into an office. So she is very controversial, and having this is divided, has already divided educators and standard people, and made a whole just wealth of questions about how she going to do this, what she going to do, what's President-elect Trump's plan for education, the Department of Education, and how is that going to trickle down and affect not only teachers?
I gotta jump in real quick, man, because it's kind of ripped from the headlines here, but if I'm correct, man, and fact check me on this, but Netflix and WWE just launched to massive. I don't know if you're going to call it success, but it was a big launch for sure. The Macaulay Culkin kind of thing is going viral. I mean, they've got everybody that's there. It's the massive WWE Netflix collaboration, big launch. So I'm thinking business model, success, the longevity and sustainability of that organization. Right, and it's back to kind of what you said, their plan, the outcomes, and I'm just thinking, here's this person that's been behind the scenes in this massively successful business is now being charged, with leading education, something just considered so serious, right?
Yes.
I mean, a pillar of sort of our institutions and our systems in this country is now going to be run by somebody who, I guess, negotiated the Netflix WWE deal. I mean, talk to me about that.
That's the business qualities that you're going to get here, and that's kind of the one things you're looking at.
Business acumen.
Is that you look at wrestling, and we grew up with it. It was a staple of, kind of cable TV, the various networks. And this does show, let's put this in the positive column, this does show that the McMahons, Linda being a huge part of that, are able to adapt, understand their audiences. Wrestling is gone. Now they are untied from a network channel, which a lot of people don't really, there's certain segments of society who are still on their satellites and their YouTube TVs and their Fubos who have those networks like USA, TBS, TNT. I remember staying up late on Saturday nights watching WCW Raw or WCW Nitro on TNT in the late version because they showed again at 10:45 on Saturdays, and I'd stay up late. Now that shows that they've adapted to a streaming service, which is what young people do, which is what young people want. So they do show that. So
they're showing adaptability, evolution, sign of the times. We know what our audience wants. Yeah. I mean, again, kind of putting us in the pro column.
Right, put that in the pro.
It sounds like
that there is an ability here to take education possibly to a different place. Because for all intents and purposes, if you think of all the things over the years that have faded that were popular, wrestling has dipped, has shot up, but they're keeping it relevant by putting it on these services. So that is
I think, man, and I want to continue to stay in this vein. I think what you have to get past, though, is this initial knee-jerk reaction, right? This initial knee-jerk that no way, can't be, could never happen. What are we talking about? So I think it's, man, moving through those like stages of grief almost. You got to get to acceptance pretty quickly.
Right.
Because it sounds like this is going to happen. So if it is, then let's start addressing the facts. And one of those facts is, in terms of a business model, WWE has been highly, insanely successful. Sustainability, pop culture, brand awareness, all of those things, versus an archaic model that for generations now it feels like we've been saying, is this working? It's not working. How can we fix it? We can't keep doing the same status quo, same old thing. So here we are doing something radically different, it feels. And yet, kind of, to keep it in wrestling terms, friend or foe. Right? Heel or hero kind of deal. I mean, where does she fall on that? I think as an educator, I'm going to assume here, you're going to say, no way?
Right. It's very scary. I mean, because what type of change she bringing? The thing with business is it's cutthroat. It is adapt or die. They've eaten like WWE has absorbed basically the other, when we were growing up, ECW, WCW, they've absorbed, they didn't adapt. You think of them just like boxing. Where boxing was the sport, but they stayed with the come-in-person pay-per-view style, where wrestling was like, hey, we're going to be on network shows, we're going to have pay-per-views. Now they're on streaming, so they're keeping relevant.
Hey, but this again ties into something that I believe Trump said, and you may want to verify this, but I'm going to use your quote here: adapt or die. And I like that kind of mindset because, again, we have been stagnated in public education. I'm a former principal, assistant principal before that, dean of students, teacher. I've been in that world for 15 plus years. I know you've been in public education for a long time as well. So we know that evolution needs to happen.
Right.
We know about just the bureaucratic, just grinding halt that our system can come to at times. So here we are. We're going to take this radical approach, but can we get enough people on the front end, the educators, this critical mass, to buy in? Or is it, back to your point, adapt or die? And this ties into what I think Trump said earlier, which is he may very well or not dismantle the Department of Education?
Right.
And if so, it's back to your question. So if we don't adapt, then we are talking about, then it's going to fade away or it's going to crumble, or we dismantle it explicitly. I mean, talk to me about that.
And what does that mean?
Things?
So before we get into that, let's kind of break down a little bit about this. Let's go a little chronologically so we can understand it. So, just like any great wrestling match, it's quiet. There's a little murmur right now. We're kind of curious. We're wondering. And then you hear that music, right? Of your favorite wrestler, the glass shattering of Stone Cold Steve Austin, the wolf howl of the NWO Wolfpack.
And before we jump into that, let's take a quick commercial break, man.
Right.
We're going to jump in real quick and hear from our sponsor, Pop Catalog.
PopCatalog.com is an amazing place to visit to find or sell any collectible you could think of. They have original movie posters, DVDs, Blu-rays, VHSs, laser discs, CDs, vinyls, action figures, video games of every system from every time period, comic books, and other art. PopCatalog.com. Elevate your collection. All right, Ryan, and just like when in the arena you hear that music and the crowd goes nuts, right? People cheer if they love the person, they boo, and sometimes throw things if they hate the person. That is what the announcement of Linda McMahon as Secretary of Education was like. It sent shockwaves across the education world, of course, but also just the political sphere of what does this mean? It was announced in November of 2024, so not long ago, shortly after the election. In a statement on Truth Social, President-elect Trump said of Secretary of Education, McMahon will fight tirelessly to expand choice to every state in America and empower parents to make the best education decisions for their families.
Hey, what fascinated me about that was how quickly he came out with that appointment, right? New Secretary of Education announced from the rip. Yep. And of course, the decision, the choice is polarizing, right? Back to our words, heel or hero. Where does this person fall on that spectrum for you? But he makes that appointment, almost immediately, and it could not be more polarizing.
Absolutely.
Dude.
It was, as soon as you hear that as an educator, I'm currently in education. So where President-elect Trump is talking about possibly dismantling, in his campaign and his stump speeches, possibly dismantling the Department of Education. Anybody in that job, in that realm, got scared. Because what does that mean? Does that mean my job?
But take me, you're a public education teacher, right? And take me real quick into that mindset. So that knee-jerk reaction. Here's the appointment. Whoa, here's what that person has done previously. Now take me into that mindset of like doomsday. Why?
Right. Yeah. We know the way President-elect Trump wants to be a disruptor, right? He's almost the antithesis of, Obama was hope and change. You could see it as Trump as change, but we don't know what type of change. What's the end game? Is this truly to make education better? Is it to slow down the bureaucracy? Or is it just to simply take power from the possibility of future administrations who may not be Republican to run that? Is this a long game?
But this is feeling a little bit, man, like, the devil versus the one you don't, right? Because, man, again, former principal, former teacher here. I understand this world and its orbit. There's a lot of complaining that goes on. There's a lot of this isn't working. What are we doing? So here we come with this massive disruptor, right? And all that comes with it. And I get it. It's loaded. I do. But it just kind of feels like, well, pick one. Which do you want? Is it fundamentally broken and we've got to have massive change?
Right.
Or is it, no, we need to stay the course and figure this out. And I know what's happening right now as people are listening. I know what's happening. They're saying, it would be if you fully funded it.
Right.
That's going to be the big argument here, absolutely, right? Which gets us to maybe my biggest question on this is is this appointment made for efficiency, right? Trump has brought in people like Elon Musk, right? And his whole Doge kind of like philosophy here. We are going to streamline things, trim the fat, focus on efficiency, and really figure out how we can adapt this thing into something better,
right?
Maybe even profitable. I don't know, man.
Better,
Fascinating,
different.
though.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, as you try to, because we're all in that place. I'm a teacher. We're sitting there and you're like, what does this mean? So you're in this place of worry, fear, maybe some anger, maybe some hope. Like maybe if you're supporting this, like, yeah, let's make some change. I think it's always important to look at what people are saying kind of in that sphere. So just kind of
man, dude, I would love to know that. Specifically, full disclosure here, we're recording this in the South. We live in Tennessee,
yes,
right? Which is it's all but turned itself into a full red state.
Ruby
right?
red, baby.
This is a ruby red state. Really doesn't matter if you're Democrat and you're voting that way because it's more than likely going to be, a red outcome. So if you're an educator in Tennessee, I'm just speaking to this because this is our home. How are you feeling about this kind of appointment? You want change. You love this candidate. But now here's the appointment for new Secretary of Education. Man, you're in that. What's that? What's that feeling? What's that cognitive dissonance?
It's the fear of, what could this do to everything? Because the whole point is, and even like some Republicans have said this, where the rep, she's a Republican from North Carolina, Virginia Fox, she's a chairwoman of the House Committee of Education and the Workforce, said about McMahon, she's a fighter who will work tirelessly in service of the students, not the so-called elite institutions or the teachers unions or the federal bureaucracy. So right there, as a teacher, I'm like, okay, one, how are we defining this? Are we, what elite institutions? So we're going, that's colleges, I'm assuming. That's Harvard.
This is Virginia Fox
Virginia
here, who's
Fox
giving
here.
McMahon all that credit. She's going to fight for kids.
Yeah, and she's a very big, now just to say Virginia Fox is a very big supporter of President-elect Trump. She has had some issues before with things she said. So, as a source there, it's definitely a Trump ally saying this. But, when I read that, okay, it's like, so now she's going after teacher unions. That scares me there. Like, she literally announced that. So teacher unions, what do? They help, they protect us. Your thoughts on unions, whatever they may be.
But let me pause you real quick.
Let's
stay on teacher unions. Again, I've only served as an educator in Tennessee. That's been my full-time designation in Tennessee. Started in Nashville, came down to rural Tennessee a little after that. Teacher unions, dude.
Right.
Do they have power here? Do they? I'm just, man, and I'm not saying, I'm not even saying pro or con. I'm just asking, in my experience here, I've been principal, I've been teacher. What impact to what effect do the unions really have? Yeah,
and it's an interesting thing is, for many other unions are very important because you obviously, for example, my dad was in the labor union, like he was a laborer for years. And, they basically, what do? They establish pay, they establish hours, they make sure that the individual companies you work for don't push you over, don't knock you overtime.
For the little guy.
Yeah. So, but in education, we only have so much to do because we really don't have a product. We have a set school day. It's not like all of a sudden they'll make us work till 6 because parents, kids would riot. Pay is, it's not like we're negotiating for a lot of pay with teacher unions. And so basically what they do is those small little protections of, how are sick days calculated? What are their salaries based on? They're just protecting that. There's been many things that teacher unions have fought against. For example, merit-based pay. Some say it's good, some say it's bad. But if you don't have that teacher union listening to teachers and then going up to their biggest job is they go up to the legislature in each state as one voice for the teachers who pay in the dues and say, hey, teachers don't want this. Here's why. I always tell my students, for example, when I teach unions in U.S. history, I always tell them, I'm like, imagine you're working in a factory and you by yourself go up to the boss and say, I want a raise. And he's like, you're making enough. And you're like, no, I work hard. The reason this factory's making money is because I'm working. I want $1 more an hour. If it's just you, he may very well go back to the floor and work, or you're fired. Now, same guy walks up and says the exact same thing, but says, everybody on the floor behind me want this because we work hard. And if you don't, we're not coming to work tomorrow. Now you have power.
Okay, but I got to pause.
And that's what unions do.
You said that's what unions do. Yes, theoretically, yes. Wouldn't you or couldn't you say now, current climate? I'm talking about where we are, January 11th, 2025, current climate. In fact, I'll even pose it as a question to you first. As if I was going to be speaking to Mrs. McMahon, new Secretary of Education, this would probably be top 3 questions, if not the first one out of my mouth, right? What is the number one problem currently plaguing school districts and schools? So what's that number one problem currently plaguing school districts and or schools? Give me a top 3 answers you think. What do you think I'm fishing for here?
So I'm answering as Linda McMahon here.
Okay.
All right, so let me get me in my mindset to be able to slap my daughter on national TV.
Right.
Okay.
Belly to belly suplex me with this answer.
I'm there. If I'm her, I say, to be able to push my agenda, I say student achievement.
So you say student achievement, but I'll peel that onion really quickly. How do we get to student achievement? I'll even answer that one for you. You're going to get there through effective teaching and learning, scope and sequence, curriculum, educators who care, educators who are trained well, professional, all of that stuff that goes into that piece. I was fishing for, and what you hope someone would say would be, yeah, I mean, I think funding, but funding impacts what I'm going to say, which is the teacher shortage crisis. I don't care how you codify this, the euphemisms you give it. We have a teacher shortage crisis. It brings me back to my point with unions. The unions theoretically can say, hey, we can galvanize support this way. We could strike maybe. But man, it doesn't even have to get to that point now because most principals worth their salt still can't hire enough teachers for their building. So if I'm McMahon, I'm asking myself, man, how do we fill these spots to keep this thing going? How can we raise student achievement, man? The barometer for success, supposedly, right? If we don't have people in there teaching. And we just did an episode on Gen Z, so we know how they feel. We know how they move. I mean, how do you get past that paramount concern? If the knee-jerk reaction is, man, this may go from a dumpster fire to the apocalypse, I'm out of here. I mean, how do you stop that hemorrhaging?
So when you asked me to answer, I answered kind of thinking as Linda McMahon, so I guess we'll wander into a conspiracy theory corner here for a second.
All right.
Is that what they want? Right now, the United States of America is 29th in math, 28th in reading. The other tests comparatively to the other nations in standardized testing, I think we're like 24th overall. The United States of America only leads categories in 2 things. Number of incarcerated people per capita, and the number of people who believe angels exist. That is what the United States of America leads the world.
That is a fascinating second fact.
Yeah, that's it. That's the way we lead. And so right now you're saying,
like angels and demons.
Yeah, for real. Like the angel came down, my guardian angel. Like that's what we lead.
Yep.
Number of people incarcerated per capita.
Jimmy Stewart.
Number of people who believe in angels. So that right there is a number. So I took this from a business standpoint, and here's the kind of conspiracy question which scares teachers because of those numbers, which is any teacher listening to this knows is due to the plurality of our nation. We're huge. We're huge geographic nation, but we're also very different style of people across it. Those numbers are low. There's a teacher shortage. Is this all to eventually privatize education as a whole? That's my fear. Okay. You use those numbers. You said teacher shortage. I think that's a leverage point for them, and that's the fear for coming as a business person. If you're thinking again of an actual business.
But I want to play that out, and that's fine. We can stay in that conspiracy corner for a second. Let's just play it out.
All right.
In terms of timeline, right? I'm hearing what you're saying, man. And when you start talking privatization, I just can't help but go here, man. serving man in an inner city underserved school for a long time. Title I.
That's where I started.
We always used to hear, the school to prison pipeline,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And used to hear about, these graduation rates of like 60% or less, man. And these were just essentially prison factories, man. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what comes to mind when I hear privatization, because we went to the privatization of prisons.
Yeah,
When you're
that's what I
a
was going to next.
for-profit prison model, the idea is to keep people in prison,
Right.
to have more bunks. Okay. So let's go back to timeline. So we're going to shift from public education to, just unilateral privatization of education. I mean, where is that transition, though? Because one thing COVID taught me as a principal, and I've struggled getting over this, man. Even, 4 or 5 years later, I've struggled getting over this, that the system was designed to keep people at work. Right? The system was designed to keep people at work. So you've got to have kids in school. Absolutely. Is where I'm going with this.
Yep.
How do we keep this seamless transition from 200-year-old archaic public school
Right.
model, right?
Yep.
That could run by itself, essentially, maybe not well, but the system runs, okay?
Yep.
To brand new model, privatized, everything in place, doesn't stop without a hitch, because it can't stop, Jordan, because then we wouldn't be able to go to work.
Right.
So I don't know, man. Walk me through that, dude. How does that work?
I think the interesting idea here is, it is just like you mentioned prisons. Okay. For years, prisons were it was a thing that the government ran, the states ran, and it's a large part. Like I said, we lead the world in number of
Incarcerated people.
Yeah.
Nice.
So education, I mean, think about that. Like, this is the scary thing with a business person taking over, not an educator.
Okay, come on.
You have all these schools in every single state, and you're not making a dime off them. You know how mad and frustrating that has to be for the billionaires who found a way to get into everything, and this just been this bubble.
Now I'm gonna pause you there. There are people profiting,
There are, yes.
Right?
Yes, there are. I mean,
man, bro. Companies like Pearson come
Right.
to mind.
There are education companies.
Third-party assessment companies. Yep. I've always believed, dude, there's so much profit in failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I'm not doing well, then I can sell you the supplemental resources,
Oh,
the
you need
professional
this.
development,
Yep.
the tutoring. Yes. Keep
Yeah,
going.
and so that is off. That's your standard. Like, there's a very small window. That you need this product, and only so many people are buying it, and then there's competition there. They're not making money off the fundamental idea that every student goes to school. There's private schools where those people make money, but they're not making money off private school or public schools. And that is a way. That's the in route here. I'm thinking is like, hey, how can we open this market?
When you say they. Because, and here's where
Right.
I'm going, even in the county where we live, where we have, wheel taxes that then go towards,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
mean, so don't some, depending on where you are, back to that geographical
Yep.
piece, which is why it's feast or famine in certain areas, which again, man, would bring me all the way back to the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Remember, Trump appoints a new Secretary of Education. Of
Linda
course, it's
McMahon.
Linda McMahon, spine buster McMahon is now going to be the Secretary of Education. It would beg the question for our audience that just don't know, just the lay person. Man, what does the Department of Education do? And I'm going back to our piece, this
Right.
feast or famine geographical deal you said. Well, the Department of Education is a bit of a standard bearer.
Right.
They say, hey, here is the standard nationwide. So
Right.
no matter where you are, where you live, your institution's going to be held to the same accountability model as somebody over here.
Right.
Right?
Yes. So the Department of Education, one of the main things it does is obviously it hands out funds to schools. Those funds are sometimes, there's a categorical grant is what they call them. You reach this number, you get this money. Okay, so it's making sure there is that push to try to get students to grow, try to get those numbers, because then you get more federal money. we really don't have, we tried with Common Core, but we don't have a set like national standards. States still kind of set their standards, but it's viewed through that.
But I think what I heard you just say, in my mind, it's like the opposite.
Right.
Because it sounded like you said, well, we kind of set these achievement numbers, and if you hit those,
Right.
it unlocks certain funding.
Right.
But to me, in my experience, the opposite's been true. When you're not doing well,
Right, you don't get the funding.
no, you do.
Oh, well, that's the race to the top. Yeah,
When you
that's what they're
not
trying
doing
to pull
well,
those. That's what I
you
mean.
get
They're trying to pull
the,
those.
now you're on this level,
Yep.
and then you go from that level to this level, which means more funding. I have seen schools do well and work themselves out of these kind of supports and
lose
fundings,
funding.
and then not do well.
Yep.
I mean, it's a very interesting model, man.
Right.
We've at times funded failure.
And that was a kind of part two. You can have this, hey, if you hit this tier, you can get this, or we'll support you with this. If you're not hitting this, here's this money to try. Like you get this money, like Title I money. It's basically, hey, you have low income students, we're going to give you this funds.
You need more. You need more resources,
and that's what it does. Without that, it would be the states. That's the whole premise here. Is it's not like there wouldn't be any educational thing. The whole idea that President-elect Trump wants to do is send it back to the states. Now, the interesting thing there is that if you looked at a electoral map from this year, you would know right now there's a lot more red states. So is that a way to kind of make sure an agenda, a way of thinking? And you can even see this from our great state here of Tennessee. One of our senators, Senator Marsha Blackburn, wrote on a post on X, Linda McMahon is a win for parents.
Man, look at those red states, man.
Yeah, a lot more red, right? Linda McMahon is a win for parents and will root out radical ideology and get DEI out of America's educational system. So, those ideas, my question is, what's radical ideology? Who's setting that term?
Yeah, and to me, man, that's rhetoric. I mean, that goes back to what's going to be radical one place, is going to be warmly welcomed somewhere else. That's the problem of going to the States.
And
again, man, full disclosure, it's also tough for me to take certain people serious.
Oh, I get it. And she's one.
But
to me,
to that point, I still am curious,
right.
About that train of questioning.
Those ideas. Like, again, this is what we talked about in episode 1. Remember we talked about grooming? How they think that we have time in our classrooms to groom kids. That's to me
that's fear-based politics,
right.
man, and we know that is emotionally driven.
Absolutely.
So we know that's what moves the needle.
Yep.
At times, we know that's what gets people, excited, stirred up, fired up. I still go back to that efficiency piece, though, man. I just can't get away from that. You've referenced corporations. We've talked about business models. We talked about Elon Musk. This new idea to just streamline efficiency in terms of bureaucracy, regulations, all of that. And now, we're going to tackle one of the biggest institutions in the United States,
right.
the Department of Education, and we are bringing a heavy hitter from the business community out to
right.
lead this. Your concern is some of this intentionally done to undermine
right.
the entire Department of Education so that it fractures, crumbles, is ultimately dismantled. My concern, my question, dude, in that timeline, how does the show not stop while we then retool it?
Right.
Right? Because you can't really file bankruptcy like some of these folks are familiar with doing with public education. And just,
so what do you do in the interim? Yeah.
Yes.
And I think step one to me, and then it's all speculations, it's ideas. If they were to dismantle it, step one, send it back to the states. Okay. So now Tennessee is over the money that's going out to its schools. Okay. It's setting certain curricular things. So then if it doesn't fail, and let's say they do that, they say, hey, here's what we're doing. Then step two is, the state has to take over the school. It didn't work. Yeah. We're going to put these teachers. We're putting this curriculum.
Listen, man,
and we've been there.
I know you're a history guy.
Right.
I know you're a history guy. So let's do it. Let's unpack it. At the start of the episode, we talked about, of course, our friends in California, the wildfires that are impacting, especially Los Angeles.
Awful.
We also talked about the passing of President Carter. So let's stand on that for a second. We've got a sponsor, Pop Quiz. I'm going to do the unofficial Pop Quiz on you.
Okay.
Pop Quiz.
Let's get it.
Right. Who started the Department of Education?
It was officially started in, gosh, I know this. It was officially started as an official secretary who's in the cabinet.
Come on.
In the late 80s, mid 80s, late 70s.
Right.
Yes.
I want to say it was under Carter's
I believe so,
administration. I mean,
right.
I think he's kind of given that legacy piece.
Right.
Look, we've got it pulled up here. Carter, is it, verify that for us regarding Department of Education. There it is. His administration established the U.S. Departments of Energy and Education. Now, here's where I'm going with that. Right. So Carter does, and Carter's birthed out of what? Georgia, right? Because his whole thing is the peanut farmer, right? Humble beginnings. He's a Georgia guy. Okay. And you had said something earlier, so we take it from the government, the Fed level, we push it down to the states, right? Now I'm thinking of a state like his, like Georgia. Here's old peanut farmer Jimmy Carter. He grew up in Georgia. What is the catalyst for him in his regime to create this Department of Education? And what you said regarding states, they control the curriculum is exactly what you said. It made me think of the Daughters of the Confederacy. Are you familiar?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So where for a very long time, you had states controlling their curriculum, right? Their messaging, how the story was told, okay? And if I'm Carter, again, I'm kind of projecting myself here into that.
Right.
And I grew up under that or through that lens. But I have enough sense to say, but that's not what really happened.
Right. Yeah.
Do I then say, man, there is a need for a standard bearer so that we don't live in these vacuums?
And that's the fear of
it
going back.
May or may not be true.
I mean, you think history guy, right? Scopes monkey trial, 1924.
Oh, come on,
it was illegal to teach the idea of evolution in schools, and a substitute teacher, you could teach creationism, but you couldn't teach evolution, and it was illegal in Tennessee. Substitute teacher did it. Kind of a setup to bring this to ACLU was like, hey, we need you to do this so we can get this out there. And this was a trial. Everybody knew this was a sham trial. They knew the defendant was going to lose because of the law and everything, because he did break the law. But it was to get it out there that, hey, this is kind of accepted fact. Right now we're like here at least to talk about it. Like this is at least whatever your faith is, the extent of evolution, but things change over time, like animals and everything, right? So this is accepted fact, and it's illegal to do it here, where in New York it wasn't. And that's, I think, the fear of like Carter is, do we want to create, like you said, these vacuums, these bubbles of, well, up here in the Pacific Northwest, we believe this, in the Deep South, we believe this. And then how do you get a well-functioning country if you're believing different things? I think that was Department of Education's whole job, is to kind of keep everything under an umbrella. And states still had, we have federalism, so states still had their individual rights to a certain point. They could stretch it, but they still had to follow these specific guidelines of things to teach. Because you don't want some state being like, we don't need biology. We'll just stop teaching biology because it's not important.
Right.
And that's the whole point. You even see this. I've read a couple quotes from different Republicans. Even Tommy Tuberville, the senator, Republican senator from Alabama, he said, "I like McMahon. We speak the same language, and I've seen the downgrade of our curriculum, of the discipline, between the students and the parents and the teachers." We need to be more of a family when it comes to education instead of an individual agency. We need to make it more personal, and I think that she'll have a great opportunity to do that. She knows a lot about it. To me, and again, like you said, that's rhetoric, right? There's some fear-based politics, but words matter.
But to make it more personal could be
each state.
Yes.
What does Alabama value?
As the personalization for each state. But it goes back to I wonder, though, in the whole Elon Musk thinking and bringing that streamlined, efficiency piece in. How do you become more efficient when then it's just turned over to each state? But I'm going back to your point about, we measure these things based on achievement. So now you've got 50 different achievement models, right, that aren't really comparable because it's not based on a standard that's nationwide. So, all of that, man, I think just has to be unpacked. Those questions have to be answered. But if you're bringing that down to what's affecting people at the school level right now, I think it is that uncertainty you talked about. What's going to happen next? And I mean, man, educators have just been put through so much, dude. I cannot imagine just having to live in that constant state of fight or flight, not knowing, the political direction at these whims of politicians.
Teachers have gone through as many persona flops as Hulk Hogan did in the late 90s. He was the Hulkster,
nice.
And everybody loved him. And then he hit the guy with hit Macho Man with the chair and ripped off his yellow shirt and had the NWO shirt, and he was bad and he was evil. And I grew up how is Hulk Hogan bad? You know what I mean? I didn't even wrap my brain around it because I was young when it happened. I had the plush Hulk Hogan buddy, in this yellow outfit. Now he has an NWO one, and then he eventually joins the Wolf Pack and becomes good again. And as he's back and forth, as teachers during COVID, we were heroes. People were thanking us on television commercials. Right after COVID, we're groomers. We're grooming kids. Now we don't know what we're doing apparently, and the states have to watch us. And that's the whole fear. Is that you see these things more individual. You've seen the downgrade of our curriculum, of the discipline. Is that what we're measuring on? Discipline? Because that was my fear when I said, if it's a business model, you're going to base it off merit. You're going to base it off achievement, but not so much even state achievement. Individual teachers is what we worry about. And this is the argument of every teacher. All you teachers out there know this, but for anyone who's not a teacher, here's the argument. We're based on test scores, but we're testing teenagers.
Right.
Okay. We're not testing people who, you test me. If they were hey, Dr. Lauer, you have to come take an educator test to make sure you're still up on all your stuff. I'm going to try my butt off because I want to keep my job. I'm coming in, teenager, 8 a.m. Here's your 2-hour math test. That morning, you got to text your girlfriend broke up with you. Maybe your mom or dad yelled at you. Maybe you just don't care.
You're dealing with the frontal lobe that's not fully developed.
There's no buy-in.
And it's hit or miss.
Yeah, so you could base my job off a moody teenager.
Right.
Off how they do that day. And that's scary for us because we're currently, that's kind of protected. We have those, but it's, there's nothing with my pay that's based on it. But what if it did? What if the money our school got was based on it? You're going to take this already super stressful job. First 3 episodes we did was about exhaustion. It's already exhausting, rewarding, but just it can be hard job. And now put pressure of a paycheck, pressure of a job. Already that's there, but because of these kids. So now... will you get this? Will you get the stress here?
I feel like we've spent a lot of time on that side, the anxiousness of it. Is there a flip side of this coin? Is there a flip side that?
So those are Republicans,
let's
right?
Look at the bright side,
right? And Democrats are, you might say, the way we've talked about thus far. So, Democrats must be tearing into this. They're actually taking a wait and see approach because we don't know. This is a huge job. It's not like day one she's going to step up to the mic and be like. Department of Education's gone, and goodbye, teachers. We're going to take a little break. She's not going to do that. She's going to come in. There's going to be slow changes. So they're kind of taking a wait and see. They're not trying to burn any bridges because they do want to be able to negotiate. Representative Bobby Scott, Democrat from Virginia, who's the ranking member of the House Committee of Education and Workforce, says Ms. McMahon does not have a long history of work in education. So I will wait to pass judgment on her nomination until she has been fully vetted by the Senate. And that's a big part of it. She still does have to be vetted. This is seen as one that should go through. But here's my take too. Is there a wait and see approach because so many of his other appointments have been so controversial? You have the Secretary of Defense. You have already we had to have Matt Gaetz, he just dropped out because of the scandal with him. So is this okay, this is a weird one, but it's the most sane?
Or will it even materialize?
Right.
Will it ever even actually happen? So before we jump on the sensationalism bandwagon, let me just kind of wait and see. And I think from that standpoint, certainly from my lens as a parent. Now, I'm gonna enter this conversation now as a parent who has a 10-year-old, public school kid. Right. And I'll be even more explicit. A 10-year-old public school kid who has an IEP. That's an individualized education plan. That's a special education services, which qualifies under federal funding. right? So they take these things very serious.
With federal guidelines.
There's incredible accountability measures, federal guidelines. We do not play, because it's very litigious,
Yes.
right, in regards to special education services. Now, I'm sitting here as a parent of a child who has dyslexia. I mean, tried and true, bona fide disability, disorder, struggles reading, getting better, but struggles.
Right.
And the pieces we've put in place at his public school have been game changers, dude. Game changers for
Right.
this young man. So I'm going to have to speak from this point of view. I love the accountability measures.
Absolutely.
I love the teeth that are in place on these things to ensure that my pride and joy gets those services that he needs, dude. And if that is being threatened,
That's scary.
in any way, shape, or form, as a parent, man,
Yep.
I'm concerned, dude.
Absolutely.
I'm worried about
Where's
that.
your kid go? You're going to have to homeschool your child with these special education. Will there still be money for it? All of that. And I think it's important, before we even go deeper in that, let's look into kind of her background. Okay, let's, for those who don't know, they may have heard Linda McMahon. They don't know much about her. I just said that the Democrats said she doesn't have much, very much experience. So let's look into it. So she was the member of the Connecticut State Board of Education from 2008 to 2009. That's her only prior educational experience. She stepped down during the first of her two failed Senate campaigns. So she has run for Senate from Connecticut. So she was trying to be involved in our government. Okay. So there is a want to be in there. She's not just being pulled from WWE without knowing.
Right.
During Trump's first campaign, she donated more than $7 million to two separate political action committees supporting Trump. After his victory in 2016, she was named as the head of the U.S. Small Business Association, the SBA.
Okay.
In 2019, she stepped down to run the Trump Superline PAC, America First Action, and stayed in close orbit with him. And what America First Action is a think tank, basically staffed by veterans of Trump's first White House team, which has served. It's kind of an administration in waiting. They're getting everything ready. She's also his co-chair for his transition team. So right now, being in there. So she's there right now, being in there, getting everything there. So she's very close. It's a theme for him of choosing people who are loyal, and who've been in his orbit, over probably potentially highly qualified. And, us teachers know a thing or two about being highly qualified, right? Like, it is something they ask of us. So that's where a lot of this anger comes from, is that you're looking at this and it's not, for example, President Biden's last pick was a public school teacher for 40 years and an administrator. That's somebody, if I see them, like, okay, they know what's going on. Does she know what's going on from her singular year in the Connecticut State Board of Education, which is a highly affluent area, right? Does she know what's going on every day in schools? Does she get this? Or is it just going to be looking at spreadsheets, looking at achievement scores and standardized tests, but not good enough, and making decisions off that without having that connection? So that's it. So, if we look at this, right, let's answer this question. We've been talking about it a little bit, but is she going to be the heel or is she going to be the hero? Okay. So what are her potential policy priorities? Some of the things we're talking about here, charter schools. Yeah. That's how that privatization and workforce education. And then basically we look into that. So let's look first into the, little finisher move here, the private school power bomb, because that's what we talked about earlier.
Right.
So bringing education back to the states. In an interview on X, President-elect Trump told Elon Musk that if elected, I want to close up the Department of Education, move education back to the states. We've talked about that. In a statement announcing her nomination, Trump wrote, Linda has been a fierce advocate for parents' rights, working hard at both AFPI and America First Works, the PAC, to achieve universal school choice in 12 states, giving children the opportunity to receive an excellent education regardless of zip code or income.
But didn't that Tennessee data just come out? Charter
Yes.
schools aren't really cutting the mustard.
Exactly.
Like the achievement data, anyway.
That was actual Tennessee
data. We
data.
also know, man, there's lots of different reasons people pull their students from public schools that has absolutely nothing to do with student achievement.
Yeah.
But those numbers did just come out. I know that charter schools were, if not under public schools, they were comparable enough to say, well, what's the difference?
Right.
Really, let's stop bashing public schools in terms of student achievement.
Right.
But charter is the big privatization, monetization model. We've got the voucher bill, that is being strongly pushed and encouraged here.
A lot of people don't want it. They even added, most Tennessee teachers know, if people outside Tennessee don't know, they tried to throw in a rider where teachers would get a one-time $2,000 bonus if this passed, which is again, for teachers, we're like, thanks, but you're kind of taking students and funding. And that's a big argument. Send that funding to us. Like right now, that funding is going to be cut aside. And the whole point of the charter schools is you basically get, or vouchers, you get this idea to go to public school on this and you can have it. But we found out through all the data through the states who've done this, Arizona, Florida, that money's usually going to, it basically becomes a discount for people already in private schools.
Yeah.
And private schools can say no.
Right.
Like they can say, nope, you're not coming here. And that's
that gets us into the weeds of that whole model.
Right.
Of,
we'll probably have a whole episode on private schools.
The one politicians, claiming discipline's out of control. Fine. So we put them all in charters where you don't have to worry about discipline. Well, not every kid's going to fit in that charter model, and charters can exclude. So where do those kids go?
Right.
I mean, you still have it just unravels pretty quickly.
Right. And a big part of this in Project 2025, which has been a much debated thing about what's
right.
But in there, we'll see. I mean, she even said, will she do any of this? That's the question. She even said that she would, if I am Secretary of Education, I will certainly fall in line with what the president's policy is. So right there, she's saying she'll do it. So is she going to, the whole point of Project 2025 is giving parent choice back. And that's what it even said, where it's erasing those zip code things. How do you organize it other than that? Are we just going to have willy-nilly, like one school is going to have 3,000 kids and one school that's supposed to have 1,500 is going to have 200 kids because they want to be there? That's where you get into these weird things, and that's why earlier I mentioned trying to make money off it. How do you fix that? Oh, in an area where some parents may not want their kid to go to school, but there's not really another option, put up charter schools. And now you're making money. That money, here's a charter school. It's right here. You don't have to go to that school.
And in theory, man, it works. But we have seen this play out here on the hyper-local level. Man, I mean, emotions, tempers flare up. It's very polarizing. It becomes very divisive all the way down to the votes.
Yep.
When it's school boards, county commissions, etc. I don't know, man. It still just seems, I go back to that timeline piece of
right.
How are you going to dismantle one of the pillar institutions in this country that keeps the workforce at work?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is their argument, the Republicans' argument is, like you mentioned, this wasn't here before Carter. We can do that again.
Right, but I guess I'm feeling like it does feel a bit too big to fail, man. And maybe that's why I don't even get worried. Concerned, I mean, you're always concerned, man. You want to pay attention, you want to know what's going on. But worry? You're going to worry about dismantling this thing now that, as proven to me, when through COVID, that it's designed to keep kids at school so their parents can go to work.
Yeah, it's an industrial model.
You can't stop that industrial train. You've referenced corporations, big business, efficiency, the economy.
Right.
Man, it's underpinned by this system,
right,
which is public education.
It is.
Right? So,
and that's why I think the way this could go is you keep public schools obviously open because you can't tick off your voters and they can't, so you keep them open. Like I said, you start popping up charter schools in areas.
Okay, that's happening.
And then all of a sudden kids filter there. That takes funding from that already struggling school. Now that school shutters.
Okay.
Right? Oh, we have to close it. But there's these charter schools here you can go to. Or we'll take you to this high school.
So, right. Over time then, small imperceptible changes over time, these kids are getting leaked to these other schools that are opening up until projecting forward, it's this sad, archaic, remember that school that's got 18 kids in it now that are like
remember
final
we used to take buses to school?
Yeah.
Because we all went to the same one wherever.
Right. Now we're talking like future forward thinking.
Change it, it's basically death by oxygen deprivation. Slowly.
Yeah.
You're just slowly, you're weaker up, can't do it. But these are here, and we fund them, so it's fine. It's a new thing. And again, the problem with that is, what are they teaching? Private schools can do.
Yeah, and this kind of brings you into my present world where I work to connect industry to education. So I do a lot of work with CEOs, with business owners that need employees. Man, they just need people. So I've wondered, why has it been so difficult to build this bridge between industry and education? I'm kind of going to your point here.
Right.
And when you think about institutions like the Department of Education, when you think about programs like No Child Left Behind,
Right.
and essentially the dismantling of vocational tech, all that kind of stuff, skilled trades. I mean, isn't it kind of the Department of Ed?
Right.
That's got us into this
Yeah.
position where business owners are just saying, man, look, not only is it hard to hire people, it's hard to hire anybody that's been trained to do anything with their hands or any kind of experiential mechanical thinking. Like, can we get those things put back into school? So I'm wondering when the business community, the corporations, do step up and say, in this new era, as we're stepping through this threshold, and I've told you before about my thoughts on like NIL, name, image, likeness, and how that could be kind of mirrored now for education, where companies are going to say, hey, man, we just want to speak to the kid directly. And we want to go to the source and look at your pool of talent, you know, as early as 8th grade and start really working with kids. I mean, I think that's the new model. As we're talking about things that are no longer off the table, you know, I think that this privatization, more corporations involved, we struggle to get a workforce, we're going to have to do things drastically different. This is the mindset, man, where they're coming from.
I think this is also a way, which could possibly not be a bad thing, but I think it's a way of us copying like Denmark and a lot of Europe that do have those high scores without saying we're copying them, because we're America, so we don't ever want to say we copy anything. We're like, oh, we innovated this, but it's really, so this would be a way of exactly what you're saying. You know, in those countries, one of the reasons their scores are so high is because they take a test in 8th grade of if you're going to go the academic route or if you're going
the aptitude.
Yeah. And we don't do that.
Germany was always referenced for that.
We put every kid all the way through, but and why don't we have high achievement? Because we have a kid sitting in English 3 as a junior who only wants to cut down trees. Like his great granddad started a tree cutting business. His dad runs it. That's what he's going to do. And he's reading Shakespeare. He's not invested in that. And that's kind of one of the flaws of the American model is we kind of force them because we want everybody super educated because that's kind of our thing. We're innovators and we have that knowledge. And now we're kind of seeing that, you know, that if we're going to put up achievement scores, that kind of hurts those because those jobs still exist and they're needed. Like vocational jobs are very needed. So is this a way to possibly copy that model without saying we're copying it? All of a sudden you kind of, oh, here's this vocational charter school. And you don't have to go up to the high school if you test into it and then you can go straight to work. And now that's not saying, you know, it's changing it. So this could be a way to force that could be a good change, you know, because then classrooms, I mean, if you're teaching English 3 and it's only people who want to go to college, your classroom's going to be
if we're talking about from the student, from both the student and the industry perspective, if we're talking about bringing relevancy back to what we're learning, what we're being taught through a practical, pragmatic lens, then yes, this very well could have a bright side to it. You know, it could be the kind of change that's just imperative right now, man. Again, I know you hear me reference this all the time. Baby boomers retiring at 10,000 people a day. We're just hemorrhaging people in the workforce. How do we get Gen Z, soon Gen Alpha, into this industry mindset and train when they're so gig economy kind of focused, they'll quit on you in a heartbeat. Man, maybe it's gonna be changing the model from the ground up. And in order to do that, man, you know, you've either got to dismantle it, burn it down, or like you said, this death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing where, eventually we're going to get here. It's just going to be a long, painful slog through the process.
And it could be, and it could come out the other side. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but as a teacher, it is worrisome because what does it mean for me? You know, another part of this, we're talking a lot about just schools in general and things, but other things the Department of Education does. They enforce Title IX. There's a Title IX cage match going on right now. The Biden-Harris administration expanded protections against sex discrimination in schools. Highly touted like trans, LGBTQ, all those, they expanded it. But they didn't change the federal law. They just changed guidelines, which means the current director could just simply stop doing them. And that's an interesting thing because Trump has rallied against these Biden-Harris moves because again, they weren't an official change. So they could simply stop enforcing Title IX, which has been in existence for 52 years, since 1972. That's sex discrimination based on anything.
You slide into gender equity there.
Right.
I mean, especially, listen, I live with a highly intelligent PhD, 19-year educator wife,
right.
independent thinker, strong will. You know what I'm saying? I mean, immigrant from Malawi, Africa, hard luck story. I mean, just all of that, man. And I'm just trying to think, of her as a kid,
right.
and just not getting the kind of equity that she deserved that helped her get to where she is. And it's still tough, man, being a person of color and a female in this climate, in this system, without that Title IX piece, man. I mean, again, I can get probably just as spicy on that as I can with my son's IEP and the special ed accountability protections that we have. So there are some serious pieces here, man, that are at risk of hurting lots of people.
And, just you don't know where that could be. And you don't want to, you obviously hope that human beings, like even if things like that aren't, we just won't start going the exact opposite if it's repealed. But it could be there. And that's why that's why speed limits exist. I'm not going to go 110 on the highway just because I really don't want to die on my way to work. But I definitely don't go that if there's a posted speed limit, I know there could be a consequence if I'm caught doing that. And that's kind of what these Title IX do. Is like we hope people aren't just going to sexually discriminate people. But if they do, or if there's an action that could be seen as that, now there's due process. Like, let's look into it. Let's make sure it was or wasn't. Without that, it's just like, tough luck. Like, that sucks. Maybe you'll have some I'm sure individual institutions will do certain things, but then now you're going of this place versus this place. And that's what gets scary. When you lose that umbrella, what happens? Also, another thing they do, the payment pile driver, right? Student loan debt. The finisher, the payment pile driver. The planned Biden student loan, his plan B of reduction is on hold because it's being litigated in court. It could simply stop being defended by the Department of Ed.
So to jump on that right there, is it, help me with my understanding, and I'm, again, full transparency, I am someone who painstakingly paid off his student loans. I understand that pain point. I genuinely do.
Right.
In terms of Biden's student loan forgiveness,
right,
is it my understanding some people received it, like they got their loans forgiven,
right, up to $20,000 depending. So
but there are some people who have not received anything.
Yeah. There's some people it's like it basically was when he first pushed it out, it went to these people. And then it was kind of almost like winning the lottery. You could literally check your
thing and
your fast food.
I remember that.
Balance zero.
Like, oh, yeah.
I know.
Right.
I was checking every day. I didn't win the lottery.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really hard. So, there's that it went off, and now it's being litigated because certain people said it's is it illegal? Is it shifting things around? There, you could discuss the money forever,
man.
But where's that money coming from? Because technically, if you got a loan, the institution's already been paid. So really what you're paying, especially if it's a federal loan, which that's all he was forgiving, you're just basically paying, like the government's just kind of being like, you don't owe me. And the whole idea is to help stimulate an economy. Like we talked about this, Gen Z, they're living with their parents because why? They're on their parents' insurance till 26 and they have student loans and they don't want to buy a house,
right?
Which shrinks the economy. Because you want your 26-year-old buying a house.
So stop paying us.
To like stimulate
put that
all
into
of us.
The economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's basically just like the stimulus package during COVID or during the recession, Like remember movie theaters? Yeah, remember movie theaters were like, Tuesday it's only $3 because they wanted people in their movie theater during the recession.
Yeah.
In 08 and 09 because they were going to go under. So they're like, hey, just
I don't think popcorn prices ever went down.
No, it's that.
Right. You still paid full
once
price.
You're in, they got you hooked.
Yeah.
Unless you just have your pockets full of candy.
That's right.
So those things, that's a thing that can be stopped completely. So now we're back to, you have some people who are like really hoping on that because student loans are hard. It's a car payment a month on top of your car payments and your mortgage.
Yeah. No, it is. It's no question. It's no joke. And I think again, in terms of a crisis, student loans are one of them. What got us into that situation, this blanket belief that if you did not go to a 4-year university, you were less than. It sort of culminated in what could seem like a major cash grab.
Yeah, that
has hindered a generation of people.
Yeah, you had to have a bachelor's, but now a bachelor's isn't even like now you need a master's at least for most places. And that's that thing is the education you're getting, and I totally see needing to like cut that back, like curtail that.
Yeah,
but also as a history teacher, I always have these little red flags and like alarms in the back of my head when I see things that, like I've said before, I always tell my students, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. When I see things that rhyme with other things that happen where educational institutions are attacked, ideas of diversity are attacked, certain idea, like when that started, and then this push of like, oh, college, you don't really need that.
The dumbing down.
Yeah, because like if you have industrial jobs are super important. Those people work super hard. But if you start to make your society an industrial society, they're much easier to control. Yeah, like you don't have people being educated.
But if you, I mean, I just think that's a slippery slope,
it is,
man.
And it's scary, and that's why I said it's way in the back of my mind.
When you look under the hood of education really quickly, it's like, well, if you were talking about an optimized education system, then yes, you may, because you're really like leaning towards liberal arts and the humanities, making sure that we have this holistic education, man, that you can be
humanism,
a well-rounded person, humanist.
Shout out to Petrarch.
Man, you're just a thinker, a problem solver, but you have the capacity to think critically. My concern is almost like this double-edged sword. You just don't have the capacity to like create anything else other than social media content, which is fine. I'm not discrediting any creators. I mean, I love that kind of mindset, but you're still controlled by an algorithm that's still ultimately feeding a corporation. So
is there any, if you're educated, are you truly doing something with it?
Are you getting outside of that box anyway, man, just because you're a little more erudite now?
Yeah, we don't have any philosophy books really coming out that anybody's reading.
And we've laughed about that for a long time, too. I'm an English major, or I got it in...
Yeah, I'm a philosophy major.
Man, look, man, we don't fund social sciences, bro. So, it's either hard science, or tech.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, like... And that's like I said, alarms go off. I always worry about that, but and a big part of this is the cost of it. Okay, so we have a president who's a billionaire, we have a secretary of education nominee who's a billionaire, Elon Musk, billionaire, and they look at education. It kind of siphons money, but the point is, some things in government are not supposed to make money. Like some things are just services, and that's what this is. Some things are going to cost, and I always like the idea: bullets or books. Okay. Is it the cost is worth people not engaging with our economy, not buying houses with that? People are saying, hey, we don't want to pay for these student loan things. We don't want to pay for this. The government, governments never save money. We've been in we've literally had one time where we didn't have a deficit during Bill Clinton's thing, right? Like that was it. Like that's it. They spend money. It's just what they do. It's a problem. If you ever, there's a great book called Anti-Fragile. Okay. And
Nassim Taleb.
And he literally says in it that there are certain things that do better with certain amounts of harms. And you just like right now, humans don't deal well. We deal better with scarcity than we do with excess. Right? Any rich person, like how many rich people do you know don't have massive amounts of debt? Like they're, you know what I mean? Because once you have that, you keep buying. We're actually able to like hoard better. It's kind of in our brain. So when you think of this, they're like, oh, it's costing money. But think of it this way. Our current defense budget for the United States of America is $820 billion. That is 40% of the world's total military spending.
Wow.
And compared to only $296 billion spent on defense by China. So we haven't been, other than 9/11, I was, 2001, I was 14. Like it changed my entire adulthood, changed my life. So we were attacked then. But by an actual army by another country.
But you're making the point here.
Yeah, we haven't been attacked since 1812.
We're totally fine
spending that.
Spending.
And it's going up every year. And we don't know really where it's going. It's research, it's development, it's keeping bases keeping bases and our soldiers safe, obviously. But, that number of 820, when China, the world's biggest army, is spending $296 billion, could we shift some of that? But that's not because there's certain keywords, like when you say defense or military, people don't touch it. When you say education, most people say, what do they say? I didn't even learn it. Everything I learned was after I was an adult.
To that point, man, I've got to give a shout out to my buddy Joe Moore. He's a Gen Xer, man, through and through. But he always makes the point to me that we fund hard science and tech. So big pharma and tech. We're not funding the social sciences, man.
Right.
We're not funding the soft stuff.
Right.
We're just not that interested in it, man.
Right, the thinking.
Typically because the profit's just not there. Scale it.
Right.
What's the profit? How do we maximize these things? If that's not there, we're moving on, pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. We want to produce. We want to innovate. We are, and that's, we are the world's superpower now.
Man, it's capitalism.
Yeah, we're the world's superpower, and if you're not producing something, you're falling behind. So ideas really don't produce something unless they're directed in an innovative way through a company. You can't just sit there and be like, I think, therefore I am. That doesn't make anybody money.
So at some point, and maybe I'm even just asking us this, man, but certainly, all the viewers, we are a capitalist society.
Yes.
You can deny it, you can
yeah.
argue with it, but we are, man. We're founded on that. So if we are that, there's like this cognitive dissonance here for us as a country. We are that. Then shouldn't we be asking? I mean, can our school systems be profitable? And if that's not in terms of dollars and cents, it is what are the outcomes that we expect? I mean, we're a capitalist society, man, and we have to ask ourselves these kind of hard questions. So if we ask that question and we kind of back up a little bit, is it okay then that you put a successful business operator in charge of it?
Yeah, and that's what that could be what she's doing.
It's like the question that's being begged to ask.
Are you going to blow it up, or are you going to mold it like clay into something under a vision of profitability and learning? Like making this, we don't know. Like, I don't want to sound super negative over this. It's just a shocking nomination. That's what this is, a reaction, right? We are reacting.
Right.
It could be 4 years from now we do a podcast about Linda McMahon is awesome.
Are we doing one of those reaction videos?
Yes, like we're just watching it.
We're
like
young people.
Man. Yeah, we are. We are hip.
That's right, man.
Awesome on YouTube. Yeah. Smash that.
We're
like
reaction
button.
content creators.
Yes, we are. Edutainment, baby.
That's
our
right.
field. We and that's one thing. And that's what it could be. And I talked to and I asked some teachers, right? Like I was like, hey, I want somebody's opinion other than mine. So I went out, just kind of asked some people around, basically what they think about this and how they feel. One said, stop messing with education without putting everything you have into it. Okay. There's the whole idea of like fund it. Then if it doesn't work, then you can do something.
Okay.
Somebody else said, to attempt to privatize it without investing as much as you can in students and teachers is like declaring your car totaled before taking it to the shop to see what's wrong. I love that one. Like, oh, yeah, my car is totaled. Like, you don't even know. It's like a dent right there. And that's kind of what a lot of people feel like they're doing. It's like, well, you're attacking us, and we're just like, let us get here, And then they also say, another person said, this is just a move to help make money out of the one massive area billionaires previously couldn't get their hands into.
It's just low-hanging fruit.
Right. And it's like, hey, it's here. Yeah. Let's now that we have the power.
It's low-hanging fruit. It has such a low public approval rate. I mean, let's just call it what it is, man. I mean, I hate it. I hate even saying that. As someone who works in its orbit, my wife who's directly in it, it's just an industry I'm passionate about, educating young people. But man, it has just a generally low public approval rate. That's why it feels like that low-hanging fruit. Right. Let's come in here and attack this thing. It's emotionally charged because our children are involved in it. So we know that emotion drives votes, certainly, right? People vote with their feet.
They do.
And it just, I don't know, man. It feels like you want to protect it. You want to put on the gloves, man, and fight for it. But it's also a system that makes it very hard for you to do that.
Yeah.
And that's I think is kind of where we are, which is why it feels like a lot of us, I'm gonna put myself in there as well. Man, we're on this wait and see.
We are, yeah.
Man, we're just gonna be, like you said, man, we're doing a reaction video to Trump's appointment of Linda McMahon, new Secretary of Education, if she actually sits in the seat. We've discussed that as well.
She has to get nominated.
But we're taking this wait and see approach. Is it going to be, this DDT style game changer?
Scorpion death drop.
Right. Or is it, this fall from the rafters, untethered catastrophe, that ends up just being a black stain kind of on the history of public education. Yeah, R.I.P., man, on that one. Owen Hart, for sure.
And we don't know. And one thing I do love, and this is a positive one the teacher said, it's kind of funny. She helped to make soap operas for men and teens a worldwide success. So maybe she could take education to that level. I mean, like, it's what you're selling. Nobody thinks, wrestling is, everybody knows they're not really like punching each other. They know it's scripted.
Right.
It's just basically soap operas for guys.
And, look, about me, my undergrad was in business administration with an emphasis in marketing, you know, and I think sometimes I feel like I have my head around that, and I've always loved the statement, you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of that,
right,
man, have they picked the best person.
Oh, yeah.
So in terms of storytelling,
right,
the ability to craft a narrative that's going to engross people and move you to action, whoo!
Right.
Now, if we're putting it through the lens of like the golden era of WWE, though, right, where they were working those guys 365 days a year. I mean, there was just heavy substance abuse because of how hard it was. Is like, oh, are we going to put all our people through whatever it takes to get to that kind of success? And will that sustain? Man, that wait and see approach, bro. It's going to be a fascinating journey, though, for sure.
Now, will I be mad if it's legal for me to have a cage match versus a teacher I disagree with in the middle of the gym? No, because I will rock some super sweet finishing moves.
Right.
Yeah, like I'm in. I'm ready for it. I got my walkout music all queued up. I'm ready. But we don't know. And they talked about the union earlier. So it's like the head of the NEA shared some thoughts that other teachers had too, other than the ones I shared with you. Those are just the people I'm close to. Rather than working to strengthen public education, expand learning opportunities for students, and support educators, McMahon's only mission is to eliminate the Department of Education take away taxpayer dollars from public schools. And this is from Becky Pringle, the head of the NEA. So, and then Will Del Pilar, Senior Vice President of the advocacy group, the Education Trust, labeled McMahon's pick as a slap in the face, particularly to conservative educators who are more deserving of the job. So it said it's an affront to the U.S. education. Pilar said, you're appointing someone or potentially appointing someone whose greatest experience was helping to co-found the WWE.
Right.
And again, that goes with all we said. Could it be a change? Could it be a more business-looking model? We don't know. And teachers are just worried.
Yeah.
Teachers are worried that it could really affect them.
I'm thinking teachers are worried, man. Principals are worried. Yeah. What's the quote you gave from that politician earlier where he's like, we've seen the degradation of the curriculum of discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, the hypocrisy there, dude. And if you've ever served in a tough school that has a lot of violence, I have.
Me too.
Man, it is not a cool place to be. It's beyond challenging. It can be at times very scary. So I'm not making light of that at all. I've been there.
Yeah, me too.
When we put someone in charge now whose body of work hinges upon fake violence,
right?
That's still, though, at times promoted as, you call it fake, man, explain this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard work that can hurt people.
Right.
We'll just call it like that. But when that's your hinge point, and now that person is running the education system, and it's just not hard to see why people could be like, so are we just going to have kids body slamming each other, and yet that's kind of the order of the day from the new secretary. I know that's silly, man. I know that's not the thing.
We're not going to become wrestlers.
But you can't help but at least find yourself in that ring, having that conversation. Like, no, guys, you can't, body slam each other now just because the new secretary of education ran the WWE.
Right. Yeah, and like the persona of that, what's going to take over. I mean,
the
and
persona
she's a businesswoman. She stayed out of controversy in Trump's first term.
Yeah.
She wasn't out there touting or saying stuff. She is a business, so she may just very well run this from behind the scenes. But there is still that parallel. What's going to happen? We have some rivalries and stuff. But before we get to we kind of look at this in some storylines. But we did want to take time because we're talking about this. Let's go ahead and do our Pop Catalog Pop Quiz.
Nice.
All right. We talked about Pop Catalog earlier. Great place. Go to popcatalog.com. So our Pop Catalog Pop Quiz question of the day is this. If confirmed, Linda McMahon will be the 13th Secretary of Education since the position became an official cabinet position in 1980.
Okay.
How many of the Secretaries of Education have never attended a public school or had their children attend a public school?
That's a fascinating question, man.
Right.
But back me up one step. I can struggle with multi-step problems, man.
Okay, no
back
worries.
me up one step. So, how many have there been so far?
There's been 13.
There's been 13 of them. The question is, of these 13, how many never attended a public school themselves,
Or had their children attend.
or had their children educated in a public school setting?
Yeah.
Of these 13.
Yeah. So The options are.
I'm gonna hope.
I'm gonna give you some multiple choice options just to help get you right.
Okay. I got.
So
options.
we got A. I'm just teacher mode here. A. There's 4.
All right.
B 10. C 1. D 0.
So you're gonna give me numbers which is gonna go to where I was gonna answer first is surely, and again R.I.P. President Carter, his legacy he just passed. I'm gonna think if he instills it, surely the first one that he out of the gate was gonna be somebody that he respected or knew or had this. So I'm at least saying there's gotta be one, but that might have been it because he was only in there for one term.
All right.
I'm gonna stick with 1, bro. I'm gonna say 1.
You are correct.
I'm right.
Yes.
Was it his?
No.
Oh.
It was
who?
Trump's last pick,
Shut.
Betsy DeVos.
Wow.
Yeah. She never went. Her kids went to private.
But what was her role in that?
She was his first term secretary
I
of
know
education.
she was,
yeah.
but did she go to public schools? What you're saying?
No, she never did, nor her kids never went. So she was secretary of education and never once, even with her children, had anybody in public school.
So you're saying, hold on, of the 13,
She's the only one.
12 of them
Yep.
had.
Yep. They went to public school, were teachers, something. She was never even in that area. She was.
I got it wrong, man, but I got it wrong for completely the wrong reason.
Hey,
I was flipping that.
Yeah,
I was
that's
saying there was at least one. You're saying
all of them.
All of them.
Because of this idea of this public trust. Like
Right.
it'd be like, we've seen this before and it's happened. I wrote my dissertation on superintendents. So
now,
like,
do you know her background? I mean, was she educated in public school? Linda McMahon?
Linda McMahon did go to a public high school.
Okay.
But it was in upper Connecticut. It was pretty fancy, but for everything I've seen, she went to public high school, and I think she went to a public college. Sometimes colleges are weird. Like, I don't know. It's hard to look up if it's public or straight.
Yeah.
Her children, obviously, they had the money by then. They went to private school.
Right, of course.
So she was there in the 60s, 70s in high school. So I think at that time, it wasn't many people going to private schools unless you were like ultra wealthy. And I think she came from modest. I mean, her parents are business people, but I think they were still kind of mid-tier. So
well, hey, thinking about 60s, 70s, let's talk 80s, 90s for a second. We're still talking about pop catalog. So
Right.
big shout out popcatalog.com. For our viewers that are a little younger, these are VHS tapes.
Those are cool.
Man, my son, the other day, he sees these sitting me. These are from popcatalog.com. So this is Coliseum home video.
the best.
This one here is Grudges, Gripes, and Grunts. It's got Shawn Michaels on the front, Papa Shango, Mr. Perfect. But my son picks this up, and he's like, what does this do?
It's an ancient
he's
relic.
fascinated by it, man.
For any younger viewers,
what
that's
does this
like
do?
a Blu-ray disc
Yes.
or a streaming.
I had to explain to him that there's a machine that you put it in, right?
Yeah.
It's called a VCR. He's like, do we have one of those? I'm like, we don't.
No.
But I used to. Here's another one, Bashed in the USA. And then if you're a big Jake the Snake Roberts fan, this I was told was the most exclusive one. This is Battle of the Superstars. Again, Coliseum home video.
I love that.
That's got your boy Ultimate Warrior on the back. $1 million man. But big shout out to popcatalog.com. These are VHS tapes, Coliseum home video.
Actually from their inventory.
Yeah, for real.
Like,
This
these
is
aren't
from
from our
Pop Catalog
shelves. It's
inventory,
from him.
man.
So that's the type of thing you can get if you want those type of things to collect.
Right. If you're
or
looking
watch.
for War Games Bash 87, right? 1987. Speaking of 1987, the year Predator came out.
Oh, God, I love that movie.
Greatest movie.
I love
Top
all.
10
That's
of all
my favorite Valentine's Day movie. I don't know why. There's no reason I watch it. It's just a thing my wife
time.
and I
On
watch.
Valentine's
Yeah, we
Day,
just watch
you're going to
Predator.
watch the movie Predator.
Yeah, I think it's just that's the thing we do because it's not
because
sad.
it's a date movie.
I think Arnold doesn't wear a shirt most of it. That's her reason.
Right, it's a setup. You
Yeah,
just
my reason is just so
priming.
like for the next couple days I can go, get me, I'm here. Like I can yell that around the house. Yeah,
Everybody get down.
yeah. Or if like she won't do something, I go, do it now.
Yeah.
Dylan. So yeah, yeah. So I love that. I was one when that came out.
Yeah.
So but I watched those VHSs. I used to go get them. So Pop Catalog has those, and that's the wrestling stuff we're talking about. This is the background that they built up, and these are it's a long standing. Now they're on Netflix, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So this model does work.
Look, professional wrestling is a long-standing institution of its own in this country, right?
Right.
You're going to be hard-pressed, man, not to find someone who has either seen, heard about, been involved in. I mean, because, you know, wrestling goes from pro all the way down to the hyper granular, like, you know,
you're in a
VFW hall.
Yeah, you're in a pole barn.
Yes,
with,
you know, so lots of people, man, have access points to professional wrestling. So this idea isn't going to be lost on anybody. What we've been talking about today is newly elected President Donald Trump's new appointment as Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. We're taking this wait and see approach, you know, on how that's going to turn out. But man, we've discussed heroes and heels. Man, we've discussed power bombs, like the monetization, you know, of education in charter schools and
payment
things.
Pile driver. Title IX cage match.
Oh, I loved that one, man. That was a good one. That was a good one. And a great sticking point, man. Title IX and those
that's something people don't think about. I mean,
special education services, man.
The student loans, like, where does that go through? Does it now become private? Which federal loans, the reason you get them, low interest rates.
Yeah.
You know, do you now go all private if they're not doing it anymore? Does the state do it, and then individual states? And, you know, and that's what we're talking about. This could usher in a lot of change, not only for teachers, principals, students, but also we still attend colleges. It could affect that, like how it goes. And that's why we want to talk about it, because this is a controversial thing. This is not your boring, this guy's been this and this and this, which, and sometimes I get why President Trump does it because of that.
It's not business as usual.
Yeah.
Man.
But sometimes government, you know, they talk about getting rid of the bureaucracy. Our founders put that in for a reason. It's supposed to be slow.
Consistency.
Yeah, like, because if that's why the House is reelected every 2 years, because that's the people's house, right? They react to things that are happening now. That's why the Senate is 6 years. They have a long-term view. They can't be threatened by the president, because if I'm a senator, I'm like, bro, like, for example, President Trump, he cannot be president anymore because now he's done 2 terms. So if he's trying to pressure me, I'm like, dude, I'll have this job 2 years after you're gone. You know, and that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to outlast a president or outlast an issue, because take a bigger view. And that's what he does. He shakes things up. And is this a good shakeup or a bad shakeup? And I just kind of want to talk real quick, you know, as we wrap this up, like what, you know, teachers can do, like kind of bring it home to the classroom. Like, what do you think
Give
about
them an action item, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, you know, pay attention if you're in a union. You know, pay attention to what they're doing. And let them know what rights you want and what rights you want preserved. Like, that's what a union does. They're your voice. So don't be a passive member. And this is one of the reasons why education always gets attacked. And I'm not attacking teachers here, but this is a fundamental thing. Teachers are nice. I've said this before on our mailbag episodes. I think teaching is a profession of the soul. Like, you care deeply. Okay, we're not just in there just like doing a task.
They're very, very compassionate people, man.
So we also don't like that's what we want to do. We want to go I just want to be in my classroom with my kids. And that's kind of why it's easy to prey on, because we don't stand up and go, hey, no, like, put a hand, stop.
Right.
We need to start doing that. Like, this is your career and this is your profession. You have worked hard for it and you're doing a great job. Fight for it. You know, and I'm not saying like go out in the street and do anything illegal. Fight through the channels. Right now, that's unions. Right now, that's your local things.
Stand up, be active.
Yeah. If anything you don't like, it could be good.
At a base level, pay attention.
Yes.
You know, but what you can control, act upon that. So if it's going to a town hall, if it's letting your voice be heard. But I do like your point. For the most part, man, teachers just want to show up and do their job, man.
We love our kids.
They love their students. For the most part, they love the profession and what they get to do. They just want to show up and do a good job. And that, too, is going to be one of my action items for teachers. Don't let the anxiousness of this, the sensationalism, the hype, the algorithm-fed chaos of this derail you from your daily mission, which is to get up, show up, help kids. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. And how do we help them in? Through effective teaching and learning. And how do you do that? By being inspired about what you do. So you can control that. You still walk into your class and give your best effort, and at the end of the day, go home and love the people that you live with, man. It's a simple message. Don't believe the hype.
Do what you do in the classroom, right? Good teachers get results. Results are something that can't be affected, right? Math, hard numbers. Like, do what you do. And don't put that extra pressure. You're doing a good job. And that's one thing teachers always were like, oh, we're doing it. It's the same reason all the teachers right now are probably going to laugh. You know, at home, raise your hand. You know, if you have gotten that email that's very vague, it's like, hey, make sure we're not doing this. And all of us think it must be us. Like, oh gosh, when did I do that? When it's really one person, but they don't want to, an admin doesn't want to single them out. Like, you're doing a good job. Just because there's stories of some not, you are, because you're there. So keep doing that. You can't, your relationship with kids and parents, the things that you achieve in the classroom cannot be refuted. That's hard data. Make those strong. And then you are strong. So that's an easy way of doing what you're doing. A lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want to like change my whole life up. You don't. You're doing what you're supposed to do. So keep doing
behavioral change is hard. The idea here is continue to put one foot in front of the other, impact what you can control in your classroom with those people that are in your orbit around you. That's your faculty, your staff, your union groups, those kinds of stakeholders. But at the end of the day, man, live your life. Do a good job and kind of maybe lean into the uncertainty a little bit. Just lean into a little bit. Hey, I love this profession. I'm excited about the future because it is a bit uncertain, but I know one thing, I'm a part of it.
Yep.
And what I do matters,
shape it.
And the actions that I take do impact. No matter what you think, the actions you take daily in a class, in a school, in a boardroom, they do impact. So keep putting those good foots forward.
You're changing lives, and that the way you change life, the way you affect those kids that's a long, any of this that happens, that is at some point is temporary. You're changing a life, and then you're changing possibly a generation, and they're changing multiple generations. That's what teachers do, is we affect multi-years. All the veteran teachers, I'm getting to the point where I'm watching some of my first students get married. And have kids. They're having kids. I could be teaching those kids one day. They'll say, oh, like Dr. Lauer taught me. And if I end up teaching that kid, cool. You know what I mean? So I could teach multiple generations. So just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. So I think wrapping that up, it's a time of uncertainty. It could be a lot of change, but we're here. We're going to keep talking about the issues. This is not a one-off. If something comes up, we'll talk about it. If there's a crazy change, we'll talk about it. We're here to attack these issues that could be attacking us or could affect us. That's what educational warfare does. So Ryan, Tommy, Matt, this has been awesome. A lot of fun. It could be a bit stressful, discussing possible changes in education that could start this administration, but I really appreciate you all being here with me.
Hey, it's been a great dialogue today. We power bombed this episode. Big shout out again to all educators nationwide, but really thinking about, our friends, our family, our colleagues that are in California right now struggling with these wildfires.
Our hearts
really
go out
thinking
to you.
about my friends in Los Angeles who are going through it right now. Also, man, great episode, dude. Thanks. Loved it. Great conversation. Look forward to the next one.
It's really great. And so for Dr. Ryan Jackson, I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer saying thank you. Don't forget to email if you have an idea about this, educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. Let's hear your thoughts, ideas. What do you think? Shoot us any cool wrestling names that you may have to go with this, like the Voucher Vortex, anything you think of.
Oh, nice.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you for being a part of the fight.